Everybody, this is Perch. I'm leading the Dallas Expo for a day on the comic show floor. And so I had a lot of takeaways. I'm walking around, I'm thinking, I've met a couple people, a bunch of people from the Comic Aficionados channel. That was really great to say. I don't know who wants to admit they met me or not. But anyway, I met several people. That was very nice. I had a lot of people tell me I look younger than they thought. So I don't know what people are thinking. I'm picturing like morbidly obese, like guy in his 60s, I think is what people are picturing. I know that's what Mumbles is thinking. But no, it's apparently I don't look like that. So there you go. But anyway, a bunch of people see. People are always surprised. Like they're always like, "Ooh, is it okay that we've seen your face?" Like I fell into this by accident, folks. Honest. None of this. All this was very accidental how we got here. So we're doing the best we can with it, but it wasn't a big secret. Anyway, didn't see nearly enough of you, didn't buy nearly enough beers. I was the only one who drank at lunch, which is on brand, I guess, for my brand, but it is what it is. I do not miss being on the floor. Now, the Dallas Expo did not put any padding down, so everybody just no carpeting, nothing for the vendors. And used to be when you would set up at a show, part of the price, because you pay to set up at the show, it's not there for free, and the prices are usually far higher than you think. And then there's different the lots go available, and sometimes they do a draw, sometimes they charge certain rates for the Comics Elite guys had a great booth that was very well positioned. I felt bad for the people who were set up around Tom King. So you had Tom King's booth, and then Tom King had a line of people wanting to get signatures from Tom King. It was a little perplexing to me why Tom King had such a line. And I'm not saying that kind of like, but you had like Ryan Ottley down there, and Ottley, who came off of Invincible, it's a very popular show on Amazon. I'm confused why Ottley didn't have a line, and often you could walk right up to him, and Tom King did have a line. It's just that's surprising to me. I'm not denying that Tom King's not a big name. He is. It was less that why did he have a line, and more why didn't some of the others there have a line who I think are also big names. But maybe Otley, King has bigger name. I'm not sure. There's no way to say this next bit without sounding incredibly petty, but here goes. Tom King did not look healthy. Just full stop. He did not look like he was doing great. And I hope, I mean this genuinely, I hope everything's going all right with him, because I saw him right before the pandemic, so 2.5 years ago. And it is a transformed man, I guess, is what I would say. And I don't know, just looked very, very different. Wife is charming as always, but did not look healthy. So I do hope everything's going all right with the guy. At any rate, it was surprising to me that the con didn't make any effort for the vendors, the people who set up booths there, to like put padding down on the floor inside the booth, or normally, again, that's part of what you buy, this kind of extra padding to stand on. It's standing on concrete, particularly if you're not able to even move around much. It's rough. So I feel bad for him. Anyway, but here's a takeaway from the con. So if you were not paying attention to any comic sales numbers, you weren't paying attention to any comics YouTube, any comics news organizations, no The Beat, no nothing. You're basically, your only data point is your eyes. And you would say, hey, going to a comic convention is a place to learn about the industry, figure out what's working and what isn't working. That is true for all industries. Everything from, there's HR conventions, there's conventions for medicine, there's conventions for software, there's conventions for trash, people who pick up trash. There's conventions for everything under the sun. You can get a convention. And if you were walking around the comic convention, you would have these takeaways. The takeaways would be Star Wars is absolutely the biggest thing in the universe. It is, very dominant in terms of cosplay. There's tons of pop culture being sold with Star Wars. And you would assume that Star Wars brand is ultra, ultra powerful. Again, just using your eyes. I have no idea what some of this stuff is selling, but you've got people dressed up in every single whatever obscure Star Wars character there is, people were coming in at it. There was a guy who was dressed up as Boba Fett who was carting around a carbonite slab that had the alligator Loki in it. It was a very clever mashup of genres. But the point is, Star Wars is, bar none, the most powerful, most popular brand, period. That's what you would assume. You would also assume that that comics have tons of tits in them, just tons, because there are every single booth that was selling the variant covers at high marked up prices was typically the superheroine in a bikini or topless with little sticky notes on top. Like there was so much there, and people were selling short shorts and bikinis that said "fuck me" on it, and you would assume that the Comic Con has had for a long time, but there's a certain element of like Spencer's Gifts that you start to feel after a while. Have you ever gone to a Spencer's Gifts and you just make the aisles a little more narrow, throw some comics in there, and make it stinkier? You often get what feels like a Comic Con. But you would assume that that there are boobs everywhere. That this is a very, I won't say sexist, but very that this industry is filled with horny people. You would assume that. And then the last thing you would assume is that closely behind Star Wars, manga is absolutely taking over. People wanting to dress up, people wanting to buy manga style, chibi art, people who want, from One Piece to Demon Slayer. There's just manga everywhere. People dressed up as characters everywhere. I saw, what had to be a lot of Spy X Family. It is the perfect couple's costume. You get the dad, the mom, and the daughter, and they're going to dress up like that. You get all kinds of stuff. That's what you would assume. I say this because those observations, with maybe the exception of the last one, don't really bear out in terms of what's selling and actually popular in the comics world. And I asked a couple people who were really into Star Wars, and I found myself waiting in a line or waiting, next to somebody. I would say, "So you read the comics?" I didn't poll a bunch of people in the show. I talked to like 3 people, and every single one had the same remark. I didn't know there were still Star Wars comics. All of them. They're at a comic convention. They're dressed up like Star Wars characters. They're buying Star Wars stuff. They're super into it. And I can basically, I don't want to say forgive, but I could definitely see somebody who was a fan of Star Wars, likes the movies, but doesn't really get into anything much more than that, but just kind of likes the movies. I could definitely see those people not knowing there was a Star Wars comic. But I think if you're going to a comic convention and you have dressed up in a obscure, you've dressed up like one of the bounty hunters you saw for 5 seconds in Empire Strikes Back when Darth Vader was talking to Boba Fett on the Star Destroyer. If you're dressed up like one of those characters, how do you not know there's comics? How is that a surprise to you? That doesn't feel possible. Quite frankly, it does not feel possible that you're that much of a Star Wars fan, that much of a Star Wars nerd. You're completely so into it that you have researched and made your own costume. Because that costume didn't come from, the shelf at Walmart. You made a costume. You put the effort into it. You painstakingly researched the character, understood all the aspects of it, and you made yourself this costume. But you are unaware that there's a comic book of Star Wars. And to me, that's a huge red flag. I think that sums up the issues the comic industry has better than anything else. Keep in mind, for all the people out there who are saying that, I'm sorry, there's one more observation. Because it does sum up what you read about on Twitter, what you see has zero impact, zero bearing on what's actually going on in the world. And you know what that is? Several booths were selling like comic boxes where the art was all, it was an artistic comic box. They had the whatever the licensed property is all over it. And several were selling backpacks and T-shirts, same stuff you've probably seen if you've ever been to a comic convention. Guess what piece of merchandise sold out first? What piece of comic-based merchandise sold out consistently at every single one? The Punisher symbol on things. The comic boxes with the Punisher symbol sold out in the morning on Saturday. They were all over. By the afternoon, walking around with my family, looking at things, the backpacks and the T-shirts had sold out with the Punisher logo on it. They were all gone. Huge seller. The one guy who had the comic boxes up there, I'm like, hey, have you sold out of anything else? I was like, no, we're close on a few things, but the Punisher, just that stuff went out immediately. It's like I could have brought. He's kind of lamenting the fact. It's like I should have brought double the stuff because I would have sold out. Okay, so what do you make of all this? Well, first off, it is telling to me that Star Wars, for all the drama, for all the stuff about both the SJWs ruined Star Wars, nobody cares about, the brand's dead. To the contrary, people are all into Star Wars, very excited, tons of cosplayers. However, the other thing I guess I want to point out here is that the Comic-Con, all of these things I've told you, they don't reflect real life. That's why I said if you were going to measure the health of this industry and you went to the Comic-Con and you looked around, you would walk away with the impression that is completely different from the reality about what's actually going on in comics. And so here's kind of my question on all this. Do you think that a lot of the people making decisions at Marvel, DC, at the big companies, do you think they are pretty much going all in on the Comic-Cons and not paying attention to the real market? Because if you go there, you would believe that things are going better than ever, that you should definitely put out more Star Wars. And even some of these kind of more wacky comic characters that are a little bit more obscure, you've got cosplayers dressing up. There was a person who was cosplaying as the Gardener. That was the character who was in the recent Batman Fear State comic. There was a character dressed up like Pixie from the X-Men. These aren't major characters. They don't move or sell books, but still there are people there. If you are, a member of DC and you show up to the Comic-Con to kind of get a sense of I wonder how the industry is doing. Let's get in touch with the fans, people buying our stuff. You'd walk away from that with an impression of stuff that's selling that is not what's actually happening in the real market. The Punisher thing is just funny. It's like, despite all the outrage, all the commentary, we've got to get that logo off. It's a white supremacy symbol. No one likes it anymore. We got to stop selling it. Hottest thing at the show. Now, was the show filled with white supremacists? Is that what we're supposed to believe here? I mean, of course not. People are, first off, I can tell you in Texas, very popular symbol. You might say, that proves the point. Okay, if it's a symbol of white supremacy, I will tell you, it is very rarely white people I see wearing that symbol. Rarely. Usually it's Latino, quite frankly. Plenty of black people wearing that logo. Guy dressed up as Black Punisher at the show, as cosplay Black Punisher. Now, I don't know if he was actually doing a super clever bit where the Punisher actually turned himself black for a couple issues way back in the early 90s. Maybe he was doing that, or maybe he's just a black guy who liked the Punisher and dressed up like him. I don't know. But regardless, Punisher, super popular. Super popular. Star Wars, super popular. People don't know that the comics exist. Manga, absolutely, 50% of the show. No doubt about it. It's, I'll throw one more little observation in here as well. Gina Carano was at the show signing autographs. I had been asked if I wanted to come and live stream from the show. I was planning on doing it, wound up turning it down for a variety of reasons. Wish I would have done it, but in fairness, also, going to the show for 3 days would have been tough. I'm tired. I've been working too hard, so I'm glad to have a day off tomorrow. It's Father's Day. tomorrow. This video will come out long after Father's Day, but anyway, glad to have the time off. For all the fuss about Gina Carano, and when I say fuss, I mean people claiming I will boycott the show if if Gina is there. When I was standing around to kind of see if I could talk to Tom King and say invite him on the show for an interview, that's don't hold your breath is is the conclusion of that story. Anyway, one of the people kind of in front of me over there was saying, "Hey, Gina is hey, how do you feel about Gina being here?" And Tom King did a kind of like wince, shrug, ignored question. He didn't stand up and said, she's here, why I'm walking out, or how dare they, I won't step. No. And I guarantee you in that show, because there's tons of actors and voice actors and comic people, Mark Russell was there, lots of liberals were there. Nobody during the show ran up and tried to punch Gina Carano. To the contrary, Gina had a massive line there at the show. One of the longer lines on the show. And I know several of you are big Gina fans, but to put in perspective, you had Ric Flair there, you had The Undertaker, you had you had the cast from Cobra Kai, Michael Hall from Dexter. Those are bigger stars than Gina. I mean, the guy who was Dexter starred in 8 seasons of this show. Gina appeared in a few episodes of The Mandalorian. I'm not saying, oh, she sucks, she's not important. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying there were much bigger stars there. Gina's line was easily dwarfed the Dexter crowd and the Cobra Kai crowd. And Cobra Kai is a big deal. Now, in fairness, Ric Flair's line did more. I think The Undertaker's line did more. You had to get rid of. But anyway, Gina had a huge line. Nobody was there protesting and picketing, saying we got to get Gina out. Which leads me to this conclusion. Of all of these data points, the thing that contradicts them, the thing that doesn't line up with the evidence you can see in front of your own eyes, is Twitter. Twitter would tell us you can't have Gina on there. It's a hate show, and then people will bail out. I don't know. Donnie Cates was scheduled to appear. So was Ryan Stegman. And so was not Clayman. Maybe Clayman, actually. I think Mitch Gerard's was scheduled. There's a handful of people who were scheduled and didn't show up. Maybe all of them decided not to show up because of Gina. I don't know. I don't think so. But in general, tons of people, Republican and Democrat, they were liberal, conservative, they were at that show. Gina was there, had a huge line. People were coexisting. But if you listen to Twitter, you would have believed that this entire show had been cast under this dark shadow of hatred and bigotry, and if you have her there, it's just no one's gonna be there. Everybody will boycott it. The problem with the show was that there were way too many people there, and the show organizers did not leave nearly enough room. It was more crowded and screwed up than San Diego Comic-Con by a mile. It was very unpleasant to walk around there. I have a much more relaxing, time at San Diego Comic-Con, which is a zoo in and of itself. Nobody sat this one out. I'd love to meet the people who said, I refuse to go, I'm boycotting the show because you've got Gina Carano there. I don't believe those people exist. If they do exist, we're talking about a truly insignificant amount of people. Nobody cared. So, in conclusion, Twitter is just full of bad information. And I think, but at the same time, if you go to the show and you look around, what you would see would give you a definite view of the comic industry that, certainly is different from what the sales and the attention tells you. Anyway, interesting show. Lots more thoughts in the weeks to come. Again, great meeting you, all the people who I was able to run into. Thank you very much. Always a good time to run into people who are fans of the show. Still don't understand why you're fans of the show, but thank you very much. And also surprising and unnerving that people recognize my voice. That's weird. I don't know how you recognize it, without the shitty audio and sound of car noises in the background. But more power to you. Anyway, thanks for listening.